This is Valley News Live at noon.
Several people are displaced and getting help from the Red Cross after a multi-unit apartment fire in North Fargo. Now, the call came in just before 10 last night about smoke and flames in a 2.5-story building at 711 10th Avenue North. That's in the Roosevelt Elementary School neighborhood. Now, the Red Cross is helping 5 adults with emergency housing, food, clothing, and medications. After the fire was put out, fire victims got about 10 minutes to retrieve essential items from their apartments, such as cell phones, before having to vacate at least for a few days. A fire watch team spent the night at the scene, keeping an eye out for flare-ups. There's no word yet on the cause of the fire or a damage estimate. Well, we keep talking about these Arctic temperatures and sounds like they're just not going away, at least not right now. Let's check in with forecaster Summer Snellbach. And Summer, is there at least some kind of warm-up coming soon?
Not within the short-term forecast, at least. This has really felt like a rinse and repeat kind of forecast. We have just been saying the same thing essentially since last Friday. It was another cold morning with our low temperatures ranging from the teens below zero across the Southern Valley and into the 20s below zero for some across the Northern Valley. But on the bright side, the sun is shining bright again, although it has been for the last couple of days. Current temperatures across our region this afternoon are ranging from the single digits below zero to the low teens below zero, under that fairly sunny sky. And many people are curious what our longest stretch of below zero temperatures has been. Well, technically in Fargo, we broke that yesterday because our high temperature was right at 0 degrees. But back in 1935, there were 17 consecutive days below zero. Talk about cold. Today is day number 5 for the majority of the region below zero, and many areas will likely be in the top 10 for the coldest stretch. And coming up in a few minutes in that 7-day forecast, I'll let you in on when we might finally warm up above zero.
10 days consecutively would be insane.
You're cold.
Thanks again, Summer. Well, 2 people accused in a construction fraud scheme in McLean County have been sentenced to 15 months in prison and have paid more than $700,000 in restitution. Now, 56-year-old Bartley Gordman Jr. and 27-year-old Sean Gordman, both of Minot, pleaded guilty to criminal charges, including exploitation of a vulnerable adult and construction fraud. An affidavit filed in McLean County says the 2 men victimized elderly or vulnerable people using residential construction fraud. A court affidavit says the 2 men are part of a crime ring known as Travelers, Irish Travelers, and several other names, and concentrated their efforts on construction scams in the rural areas of oil-producing North Dakota counties. The owners of a Minneapolis restaurant have filed the first lawsuit against the city over property damage caused by the civil unrest following the police killing of George Floyd. Now, a federal complaint filed Monday by owners of the Town Talk Diner and Gastropub alleges that Mayor Jacob Frey knew about the seriousness of the violent protest, but he and other city leaders failed to take steps to protect small businesses along Lake Street. The Town Talk Diner and Gastropub was burned down. Minnesota Public Radio News reports that the lawsuit seeks $4.5 million in damages. The Minneapolis city attorney disputes the lawsuit and says the mayor acted swiftly and requested support from the Minnesota National Guard. We're going to get an update today on the North Dakota Health Department's COVID response. Governor Doug Burgum is holding a news conference this afternoon on the COVID-19 pandemic. He'll be joined by the State Health Immunization Program Manager and Chief Laboratory Officer. More than 32 million people nationwide have received at least 1 dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, but a disproportionately small number of recipients are Black and Hispanic. In New York City, 51% of white people aged 65 and older have been vaccinated, but that plunges to just 12% of Black people and 15% of Hispanics in the same age group. Nancy Chen introduces us to a group of doctors pushing for equal vaccine or access.
They're going to call the number and pre-register you.
Long known as providers for their communities, places of worship are now working with doctors to bring COVID-19 vaccines directly to neighborhoods hardest hit. This church-turned-vaccine site is in the Bronx, which has the highest number of hospitalizations and deaths in New York City since the start of the pandemic.
They check in and then they're waiting, and then they come to one of the booths.
Dr. Jacqueline Delmont is the chief medical officer of Somos, a team of physicians providing health care for low-income communities of color.
We're out here trying to vaccinate our elderly predominantly from underserved communities.
Governor Andrew Cuomo and Mayor Bill de Blasio turned to enlist Somos as part of their COVID vaccine equity task force.
We understood from the beginning, both testing and vaccination, that we needed to integrate in the community, that these are patients that cannot commute, either because of age or financial reasons.
Somos does that by bringing vaccination sites to them in public housing developments, churches, even Yankee Stadium. The group has given out more than 37,000 shots at 37 sites. At this church, Somos vaccinated nearly 300 people, 65 and older. Dr. Ramon Talaj is the chair of Somos.
Healthcare needs to change to avoid and improve inequality. And the only way that will happen is you put it in the hands of the people trust in the community.
How do you feel about getting a shot inside your church?
Great. It's like a home away from home.
Joseph Christian is a parishioner here and had no problem getting signed up.
One of my choir members goes to the church here, and she's the one that called me.
Do you think that you would have gotten your shot so quickly if you had gone somewhere else that's much larger?
I don't think so, no.
Nancy Chen, CBS News, New York.
There's a lot going on regarding COVID vaccines, and staying on top of the latest information is easy. Just have the VNL vaccine tracker handy. To check it out, visit our website or simply open your phone camera and point it at the QR code on your screen. Then tap the link that pops up. We'll keep that up at the bottom of your screen for a few minutes. Day 2 of Donald Trump's impeachment trial after senators voted the proceedings are constitutional. Today, opening arguments on Capitol Hill. That's where NBC's Susan McGinnis has the latest.
Senate having voted.
With the question of constitutionality now settled, the Senate today officially begins the historic second impeachment trial of Donald J. Trump. Democrats demanding that the former president be held accountable.
Presidents can't inflame insurrection in their final weeks.
The Trump defense dismissing the charge against him as political.
We can't possibly be suggesting that we punish people for political speech in this country.
The opening salvo from Democrats was devastating. Graphic video reminding the senators that their lives and democracy were on the line January 6th after the Capitol was violently attacked by a mob steered by President Trump.
And we're going to the Capitol.
Democrats' impassioned plea that no president is above the law.
This cannot be the future of America.
The Trump defense notable for what even some Republicans describe as meandering and ineffective, reportedly infuriating Trump himself.
I worked in this building 40 years ago. I got lost then, and I still do.
It was disorganized, random, had nothing. They talked about many things, but they didn't talk about the issue at hand.
Though 6 Republicans voted to move ahead with the trial, Democrats will need 17 GOP senators for a conviction. A high bar as they try to hold a former president responsible for a low point in American history.
Officials say Donald Trump will most likely be looking at a second acquittal, but he remains the only president in history to be impeached twice. Well, Facebook announced today that it will start to limit political content in the news feed. Last month, Facebook said it will no longer recommend political groups to users, and it would consider some steps limiting political content following the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. According to the Tech Transparency Project, Facebook was used to help organize the pro-Trump rally that sparked the intersection. Now, the social media giant now appears to be implementing some steps, at least temporarily. Facebook says the temporary reduction of newsfeed political content will start this week. Well, coming up at noon, the opioid crisis is taking over the U.S., and one organization is stepping in to help aid in the fight against drugs. And the cold snap just doesn't seem to want to go away. We have what to expect up next with forecaster Summer Snowhawk.